Thailand, a really important U.S. ally, is in the middle of yet another political firestorm. The prime minister was just kicked out of office, but this is so much bigger than just one leader. It's really the latest battle in a fight that's been going on for 20 years now, a fight for the very future of the country. So let's break down what just happened and why it feels like we've seen this movie before.
Believe it or not, this whole thing kicked off with a single phone call. Amid a pretty tense border dispute with Cambodia, the Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, used these exact words. Now, they might sound harmless to you and me, but in the supercharged world of Thai politics, they were like political dynamite. Calling Cambodia's powerful former leader uncle was seen as just way too deferential, and then calling her own military commander from the opposite side, that was seen as a flat-out betrayal.
And the fallout from that call? Well, it was fast and it was brutal. On August 29th, Thailand's Constitutional Court, a body known for siding with the traditional elites, officially gave Prime Minister Paetongtarn the boot, citing ethics violations. It was just a stunning end to her very short time in power.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth did a bit of gunfire at the border spiral into a full-blown constitutional crisis that toppled a government? And so quickly, too. Let's walk through the timeline of this incredibly rapid downfall.
Okay, so it all kicks off in late May with that border gunfire. A few weeks later, Paetongtarn makes that infamous phone call trying to calm things down, but her choice of words just completely backfired. By July 1st, the court steps in and suspends her from her duties. And then, less than 2 months after that, boom, she's formally removed. I mean, that is a political collapse at lightning speed. So we have to ask the big question here. Was a single, maybe clumsy, phone call really enough to bring down an entire government? Or was it just the perfect excuse for something much, much bigger? Something that's been simmering under the surface of Thai politics for a very long time.
And that right there brings us to the real heart of the story, what people call Thailand's long political war. Honestly, everything that's happened in the last few months, it's just the latest chapter in a huge 2-decade power struggle that really defines the country's entire modern history.
At its core, this whole conflict boils down to two sides and a massive tug of war. On one side, you've got what we can call the challengers, populists like the powerful Shinawatra family and these new youth-driven reformist parties. Their whole game plan is to win power through elections. And on the other side, you have the establishment, the military, the monarchy and its supporters, and the court system, all working together to protect the old way of doing things, the traditional power structure. And if you want to find the starting point for all this, you have to look at this man, Thaksin Shinawatra. He's the father of the prime minister who was just kicked out. Back in the early 2000s, he totally rewrote the rules of Thai politics. He brought in things like universal health care and put money directly into villages. This made him a hero to millions of rural and working-class Thais. But the old guard, the elites in Bangkok, they saw him as a massive threat to their control. So in 2006, the military sent in the tanks and removed him in a coup. And the result of that initial showdown? It's been 2 decades of deadlock and instability. We're talking 2 military coups, huge street protests that have sometimes turned violent, and this bizarrely regular pattern of leaders who win elections getting knocked out of power by the courts. It's this constant cycle. The people vote for change, and the establishment pushes right back. So how does the establishment manage to do this over and over again? How do they consistently manage to sideline leaders who were democratically elected? Well, it's not random. They've actually developed a very effective and very powerful playbook for keeping control. It's basically a 3-step process. Step 1, the Senate, which is filled with military appointees, can just straight up block a party that won the election from forming a government. If that doesn't work, you move to Step 2. The Constitutional Court steps in. It uses these really broad laws to dissolve entire political parties, often on charges that seem pretty political. And then, if all else fails, there's always Step 3. The military just rolls in and stages a coup. And if you think this sounds like some wild conspiracy theory, just look at what happened last year. In the 2023 election, a progressive party called the Move Forward Party won the most votes, a huge victory. But then what happened? The Senate blocked them from taking power, and then, a little while later, the court dissolved the entire party. It's a perfect, textbook example of the playbook in action, and it happened just now. Okay, so, a whole lot of political drama. But why should this matter to the rest of us, especially if you're watching from halfway around the world? Well, the stakes are actually incredibly high, not just for Thailand, but for key partners like the United States. So where does that leave Thailand right now?
Well, they're in a pretty shaky situation with a fragile minority government that's already promised to hold new elections within 4 months. Yep, the country is heading right back to the polls with every possibility that this whole crazy cycle could just start all over again.
And what's really wild is that the latest polling sets up a fascinating showdown. The People's Party, which is basically the new version of that Move Forward party that got dissolved, is still the most popular party by a pretty wide margin. It seems like the voters are not giving up on their message of reform. But here's the real wild card. A full 21% of voters say they are still undecided. That is a huge chunk of the electorate, and they could swing this election in any direction. It makes the final outcome completely unpredictable. Now, for the United States, all this instability is a really big deal. Thailand is a formal military ally, a critical piece of the puzzle in a very strategic part of the world. When their politics are in constant chaos, it makes them a less reliable partner for things like security and regional initiatives. It also just flat out undermines America's goal of promoting democracy. And it's worth remembering, the U.S. Congress has cut aid to Thailand after past coups, and that option is always on the table. So that leaves us with the ultimate question. After 20 years of this back and forth, is Thailand finally on the verge of a real democratic breakthrough where the will of the voters actually sticks? Or is the country just trapped in a political Groundhog Day, a cycle of crisis that it just can't seem to break out of? I guess the upcoming election is going to give us our next big clue.